Welcome to the Photography Opinion Podcast. We discuss all things photo, video, and camera related. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op.
So, hey, Ben.
Hey, Stuart.
How's it going?
Hey, Jinx.
I've noticed, as we've been recording, some boxes have been moving around in the background very mysteriously. So
you have noticed. It's true, because they have been. I've done my best to try and keep them out of frame, but for the astute viewers out there, you can probably see them in the background. No, I am working on moving. I had an announcement on the channel that I just got a brand new studio space, so I'm working on packing up and getting that space kitted out.
A brand new studio space, man. I would like that. That sounds really good.
So here's something that's funny. The studio. So it is a house with a garage, but the garage is a completely detached structure, and so it is large enough that I'm turning that structure into the high-end commercial studio that I have envisioned for it. Awesome. And that studio is actually larger than my house now. So.
Tons of space. Yeah, I only for viewer reference, I only have like a single car garage and then kind of like a little bit of an office for my like in-house, studio shooting. So this is a palatial estate in comparison.
Well, I mean, for the hardcore people who want to go back through the YouTube archives, I've shot a ton of stuff in your garage. So.
Well, it works, but it's no like huge detached structure studio. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's almost lean-to.
It's true. Yeah, it's built right into the house. So let's get back to the studio. So since it's so big, what are we talking about here? What is it going to look like inside? What are you going to be doing in there? I mean, beyond shooting, of course.
I mean, I'm so glad you asked. No, this episode, we're just totally talking about the new studio. Yep. So if you are interested in what I'm doing in my studio or interested in setting up your studio, come along for the chat. So when I was kind of thinking about the space, the very first thing that I wanted to figure out was, what is its purpose? So if you are shooting tabletop photography, you're gonna set up all your stuff for tabletop photography. If you shoot cars, you need to make sure that you have like a cyc wall big enough that you can shoot the cars with tall enough ceilings, you can get those lights and everything. So the two main purposes that I wanted for my studio were shooting for portraits and models, being able to shoot full-length models, not just like waist up, and then being able to do print sales and album sales and client meetings. So I would say roughly half of what I do was pre-COVID weddings, and the other half of it is portraiture. So these are the two things that I wanted to be able to design this space for. Now a lot of the weddings have dropped off, and I am actually getting way more into tabletop photography. So this is not something that I just started doing, but it's something that I've shot for a lot of other clients. But when I shoot it, I usually shoot it in their studio or in their conference room or in their space. So I bring my gear and my skills to shoot their product stuff, but I'm just here in my living room. I don't currently have a space to shoot any of that. So that's kind of all the things that this new space is going to incorporate. So it was very, very important to me that it feels kind of like posh and high-end and comfortable, because when a wedding client sits down, weddings are expensive. They're going to spend a lot of money, and they do not want to spend a lot of money on someone who's just in his garage. So the very first thing was making sure that clients feel like good and comfortable, and making it feel like a really kind of like high-end, forget you're in a garage type space.
Very cool. Very cool. So how much is that space then apportioned for that? How do you split that space up to have that meeting area and then also your shooting space? What does that look like?
So when I was first designing it, there were a bunch of different areas that I knew I needed. There was the actual shooting space, which originally I really wanted to do a built-in cyc wall, like so badly. And then there's of course storage, because my photography gear isn't gonna go anywhere else. All my cameras, all my lenses, all of, my backdrops, like my drone, all my video equipment, all of that has to go somewhere, and that's all going to be stored in the studio. And then, of course, I need to have the actual client meeting area, which would consist of probably like a coffee table, a couch, and like a TV, or I was also kind of playing with the idea of TV versus having a projector. There was a thing on my Pinterest where I saw someone do a projector onto the psych wall. You're working double duty right there, and it looks super cool, and I'm like, oh, I love it. And then, of course, when I'm working with models, I kind of wanted a nice little vanity area where they can do makeup.
Very cool. So you've mentioned the psych wall several times.
I wanted it so bad.
You wanted it. Well, so what happened? Did you get
it's
one
not
or
happening.
Not
no.
happening?
So I designed this studio. Oh, and so the other thing is, because it is a garage, it has garage doors that open in the front, right?
Yeah.
So rather than shooting side to side, so when you open the garage door, the light comes in from the side, I actually designed it so I shoot front to back. So when you open the garage door and I'm shooting something, the light is behind me. So the first thing that I could do with that is I could open the garage door and position the model a little closer to the door and have open shade. So they are getting that indirect light. So there's no direct light on them, but they are gonna be lit. And so that is one way that I could shoot some like natural light portraits. But the other thing too is, if I need to be able to shoot something full length, but I need that separation from the model to the background of whatever I'm shooting, I can just open the garage door and just walk out the driveway. So I can get that length and distance that is bigger than the building actually is, to be able to get the photos of like, I want to shoot full length with an 80 mil. Well, you need 40 feet for that, and the building's only like 27. What are you gonna do?
Well, with the garage doors, it's a wall that you can just kind of remove, so you can expand it and make it a bigger building than it functionally bigger than it actually is. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of the initial idea of kind of like how I was positioning everything. So I was going to have the client meeting area in one corner, storage in another corner, and then the one entire is a 2-car garage, so one entire car bay was going to be the shooting area with the psych wall at the end. So I was going to lined up with the garage door so that everything's centered. Like I could theoretically shoot a car in there if I wanted to, like my Scion IQ or a smart car, not like a full-size sedan, but I could still do it.
Still a car.
Still a car.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to do, but when I was setting that up, I realized that the client meeting area was way too cramped, and it was way too uncomfortable, and it doesn't feel good being pushed butt up against a garage door.
Yeah.
I got new doors, so no matter how nice those doors are, they're still garage doors. So it was just kind of like an uncomfortable, like, part of this is not necessarily feng shui type thing, but it is a little bit of that. It doesn't feel good to have that opening kind of behind you. It's just kind of that unease and you having all that stuff just kind of compressing you in. I wanted it to feel nice and open and relaxed, and I wasn't getting that feeling with kind of the original layout. So because this studio, if you're like a tabletop photographer and you're not meeting clients, and your couch or side chair or whatever is just for like the art director, I totally would have been cool with that. Like, they can sit in the corner, let me do my work, and then they can come on over when I'm ready and like critique the images. But that's not the kind of work I do. I mainly shoot to consumers rather than to businesses. So I'm working with like brides and families and not art directors for magazines mostly. Yeah. I've also worked with art directors for magazines, but like I said, it's just a totally different vibe on set. So this space, actually, if I had to have one perfect and compromise the other, I want the client meeting area to be perfect. And I will compromise my shooting space, but that's just like a personal decision that you have to decide for yourself. So in doing so, I kind of moved around some of the shelving, and that shelving went on that back wall, all my storage, where the psych wall was going to go. So I kind of lost that big open wall that I was going to have.
So you said that you sacrificed the big wall, the psych wall. So what did you replace that with? I assume there's still some sort of background system that you're going to be using.
Oh, for sure. So if you're on a budget, I totally could have just kept the stuff that I have. I already have a background system. It is, 2 stands with the big footprint and a crossbar. Like, it totally works. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But because all of this space is getting designed and it is all... So even though I said at the beginning of this episode that this space is like a big space, it fills up quickly. And especially like
Oh man, yeah. You're like, oh, this big empty room, and then you put your stuff in it, and all of a sudden it's a small.
All of a sudden it's a very small room. So, for those of you listening, the room is roughly about 24 by 27. So it's about 660 square feet, something like that, which is roughly the equivalent of kind of what I have now. But what I have now is all my Pelican cases. Like, I have a bunch of stuff that sits here in the living room, and then when someone comes over, I record a podcast, it goes into the bedroom, and then when I go to sleep, it comes back out. Like that's gonna be over. We're done with that.
Well, plus, I mean, just having a space where you can leave stuff set up is huge.
Oh yeah,
that's...
as soon as this gets set up, you're gonna see so much more content on the channel because it'll be easier for me to produce. I don't have to spend an hour setting up and then a half hour tearing down every single time I want to make something.
Like, that's one of my biggest issues with traditional backdrop, stands is, at least for me, I work in a garage most of the time, and that's also my like workshop space where I work on 3D printing and electronics and other stuff. And setting up a backdrop and tearing that down makes me want to just not film anything and never set anything up. So it's huge to have just a space for that.
And for a little while we left it set up, but I'm imagining that when it was set up, you were sacrificing doing other stuff like the 3D printer, because I think we put it right in front of your printer.
Yes.
So it's like you had to choose, what am I going to do? Yeah. When in an ideal world, you have everything at your fingertips.
Yeah. So what did you go with instead of a traditional
Yes, what did
system?
I go with? So I could have done a traditional crossbar, but the biggest issue that I had with that is the feet. So you have this huge footprint, which 1 is a tripping hazard, 2 requires a bunch of sandbags, and even though it's like movable and stuff, I don't really want those big feet. I want something with the smaller footprint that takes up less space. If I can get the exact same thing, the backdrop size didn't change, but how wide of a space that backdrop needed, because I would need roughly another 2 feet on either side with a traditional one. So a 10-foot backdrop is now 14 feet wide. So what I went with is actually the Manfrotto Autopoles. So sweet. I do have them now. They're not set up yet because I'm not in the new space quite yet. But the one thing that I can say of all the research, from Autopole to Autopole, if you want to get something off-brand, go for it. The only reason I got the Manfrotto one is because they had a whole kit that was the same price as some off-brand one, pieced out individually. And I'm like, well, because they have a kit that's discounted, it makes it the same price. Might as well get like the name brand one. But the one thing that is to watch out for is if you get the Autopole, do not get plastic chains. Plastic chains will tingle and break immediately. Get metal chains. Everyone on the internet says so. And now that I've seen it for myself, I completely agree.
Nice. Well, so that covers your backdrop, but you mentioned that although
there's a lot of other stuff like shooting space wise that goes into that.
I was gonna say you shoot a lot of people, and the backdrop will be like super useful for that. But you said you were getting, with less weddings, you're getting more and more into like tabletop kind of stuff. What does your setup look like for that, or what you're intending to install?
So there are kind of like 2 different type of like product photos. There are big photos that require a set. So that could be, I shot a bunch of t-shirts, and those t-shirts were using the invisible mannequin technique, which I will link to down in the description. But you were seeing the inside returns on the shirt, so I was putting them on a mannequin, and I was shooting this, and that was almost like shooting people. So I used the same things there. The other thing that I would use a huge set for is I did a bunch of work for like Costco and for their mailers. Like if you had a toaster, you had to build a whole kitchen set that you could place that toaster on. So we had huge sets for this tiny little product. So just having the big open space that you can configure covers like your hero shots or your really large items like t-shirts. But the other thing for tabletop photography is whenever I shoot so many knives, and I've shot knives for 3 different companies now. So whenever I'm shooting that kind of thing, it's like, it's shiny, it's reflective, it's incredibly detailed. They're expensive items, but they're quite small, so you have to really get in there. Having a workbench that you can, roll your seamless out onto, super useful. Having a rolling cart where you can have all of your flags and gobos and reflectors and all the little tools that you use for that. So many clamps, so many different types of clamps. Just being able to have all of that at hand rather than, oh, it's all over there, let me go get it. So I'm gonna have 2 different rolling carts. One rolling cart is going to be specifically so the top will be so I can set and do all these tiny little miniature type product stuff. And then all of the drawers in that rolling cart will be like the reflectors and flags and clamps and like all of this stuff that I need for shooting tabletop. And then I will have a second rolling cart that will actually just be all the camera gear. So my lenses and cameras and triggers. And then the top of that one, I can have my laptop. And so I could shoot tethered if I want to. And then that'll also be really useful too when I'm just shooting anything. Like if I'm shooting some portraits and then I can shoot tethered and I can be like, all right, let's take a look at that. That is way less useful when you're shooting like families because you don't necessarily want them looking at the monitor all the time, but it's super useful when I'm shooting like actors or lawyers or something where I'm taking a lot of time to get that one perfect photo. So I want to be able to review, like, here are the things I like about this photo. Here are the things I don't like about this photo. Let's go back and try it again and kind of work on this until you get the photo you need. I'm gonna have those 2 different kind of rolling carts that I can kind of move and position as needed.
Good deal. So you're getting rid of your stands for your backdrop, but you're still going to use a lot of stands, I'm assuming. What do you do with
stands
with that kind of stuff? Like, how are you handling your C stands? Like, my C stands are so annoying because they're huge and heavy and they don't seem to fit in any place particularly well for storage. Like, what are you doing with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there are 2 different types of stands for sure. One is what I would call travel stand. And travel stand, in my opinion, is literally anything that is not a C stand. So whether you're talking about like the really cheap like impact ones, or I have some Manfrotto ones that fold flat and stack, those are actually like designed and built for travel. But just any stand that doesn't weigh, I just did a video on C stands that I'm not sure if it's published yet. We'll see when this comes out. But I weighed a bunch of different C stands, and they all weigh anywhere in between 15 to 19 pounds, which is quite heavy. So C stands are definitely meant for studio, and so I want to be able to have those next to the shooting space at the ready so I can just pull them off the rack. Right now, because I'm not in that studio space yet, I have a C-stand bag that they're all stored in, but I never ever use the C-stands unless I need like, oh, for this specific shoot, I'm going to need multiple C-stands, because just the act of going to the bag, getting out a single stand is so much effort, well, because they're all like strapped and tied in there, and that bag is 90 pounds. So like that, we talked about
portable.
No, not exactly. I actually put a big piece of gaff tape on it and labeled it 2-person carry only.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not getting a hernia over picking up this C-stand bag. So, just kind of having those C-stands at the ready and accessible. That bag will be emptied and I'm going to have a rack. And of all the different C-stand options available, all of the commercially available options, they're all awful, and I've never seen any of them in an actual commercial studio that I've worked in. So there's a fun little tip for you. The best thing that I found is really just getting like a rail that the feet can sit on. And then if you can put on a floor rail strip, literally just a little metal L that the feet can kind of just have something to tuck into, then it just sits down and it won't shift or fall or whatever. So yeah, I'm just going to have a short little rack where they're just all in a row, and then I can pull them off.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, what are you doing with the rest of the stuff around that with your grip equipment? What does that look like?
Yeah, so there was a photo that I saw of like the most organized studio in the world type thing, which they lie. The most organized studio in the world is Casey Neistat. We all know this. That is an objective fact. But yeah, he basically had this pegboard with all the little things, and then he hung his sandbags, which I think is silly. Just like put your sandbags on the floor, like you can hang the lighter ones. Huh. Yeah. I mean, I think theoretically it's so that he can just like at arm's height instead of having to bend over and pick them up. But yeah, so I'm gonna have all the grip equipment on like a grip wall. Cool. Some studios I've seen, they use like the pegboard things where like all your clamps are like on this row. Another studio that I worked at, it had the closet with all the bins. So like if you needed a knuckle, all of the knuckles are in this bin. If you needed a clamp or a super clamp, all the A clamps are in this bin, all the super clamps are in this bin. So because of like the positioning of kind of where I think all of the grip equipment's gonna go, there's actually a door that swings open, which means I don't really have room for like a structure. So I think I'm gonna go with like the pegboard kind of wall stack thing. But so there, one thing that I want to mention is something that I picked up from Adam Savage that is, I think, the best tip ever. So internalize the phrase first level accessibility. What that means is that you don't have to move anything out of the way to get the thing that you actually wanted. Everything is at your fingertips.
Because if you have to move something, you're never going to touch it again.
Yeah, you're never going to use it. Or you're going to forget that it's there, or you're going to, just like fumble with things. To get it out of the way of like, I don't have enough hands to grab that thing off the shelf. You don't want that. So when you're designing your space, you definitely want it all designed so that you have access to everything you need without stuff being hidden. It's totally okay to hide like some things if like it really comes down to it and you don't have enough space. You're not Adam Savage. Like my crash pad is a thing that I use on very rare occasion. It's okay to tuck that one up in the loft. Yeah. Like
I need a crash pad at a moment's notice. Well, so I should mention, for those of you that haven't seen Adam Savage's workshop, I would definitely go and look that up on YouTube. He doesn't go quite as label crazy as Casey Neistat does, but it's an extremely like meticulously well thought out workspace. It looks actually pretty chaotic and to some degree messy, but it's just
like a
it works
crazy
for him.
Hoarder.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you ask him a thing, he knows exactly where that thing is, and he can just say, "Here it is." He doesn't need to like search for it or find it or move anything to get to it.
It's a great example of a space that is molded like incredibly precisely to one person's needs.
It is finely tuned. Yeah, absolutely.
It's really cool stuff.
So like kind of on that vein, one of the things that I hate about those stackable storage bins, the big plastic ones that you can get at Costco or Target or whatever. Well, the issue with stackable storage bins is you shouldn't stack them. If you stack them, you will never, ever, ever access whatever the thing is in the bottom bin.
So true. It's so true. Yeah, I've got a number of them, and boy, I mean, there's stuff in some of mine that are on the bottom of the stack. I don't even know it's in the bin anymore. I mean, it could be anything.
Well, I mean, when we were recording the episode earlier, you were having an audio issue, and you're like, "Oh, I need a new XLR cable." Oh, it's in. Never mind. It's in that bin. We'll just live without it.
Yeah. I'm working on this recording space. It'll be better.
So there's gonna be a grip wall.
Cool.
The one last thing that I definitely know that I have is I have a bunch of 10-foot backgrounds, which again for the auto pull system, all of your backgrounds need to be the same width if you're not planning on moving it. I'm planning on kind of just setting up my poles and just leaving them there.
Yeah.
But the problem with the auto pull system versus a traditional crossbeam is if you set them 10 feet apart, you can't have a 9-foot backdrop. That just like they literally have to span the entire width. So I have a bunch of 10-foot backdrops, but then I have one 9-foot backdrop. So you need to have like another pull for that one to like make it span the 10 feet. But because I already own all of these like full 10-foot backdrops, I think I have 4 or 6 of them, something like that now, that I've just accumulated over time. If you don't want to ruin all of your backdrops, especially the paper ones, you need to store them vertically. So a lot of people don't have 10-foot ceilings, so I've seen those things where like you can have like the rolls and stacks, but the weight of the paper on paper, it just warps it, and then the tube itself, like it warps the tube, so many things get messed up when it's okay to lay it down for like a minute, like you're totally fine. But if you're gonna store it there for months and years and needs to be stored vertically, or you're gonna warp and ruin that backdrop. So finding a space where you can have that full 10-foot storage area is gonna be really important. I haven't quite figured out where that goes yet. I just know it needs to be vertical somewhere.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, I imagine. Once you start moving things in and getting an exact feel for how things are falling into place, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
It'll be shifted around a little bit.
There will definitely be way more videos on the studio. They're just like, we're not going to turn these all into podcasts. We just thought this would be an interesting kind of like walkthrough of like my ideas and how I came about them and why I'm doing a bunch of this stuff. There will be a bunch more videos. And speaking of which, bonus one here. You sent me a excellent video by DSLR Video Shooter that had some DIY sound panels. You can tell them more about that one, but I made those. And
sure.
Great.
So yeah, I know for a fact more videos are coming from your studio space because you're doing some sound treatment, and I've been watching this channel, DSLR Video Shooter.
He's bigger than I am. You should know him.
Caleb
Go check his
Pike.
stuff out.
He has an awesome channel, like super like really meticulous videos, really awesome content. He doesn't waste your time. It's really good. Just go watch DSLR Video Shooter, first of all. Second of all, he has a video about these DIY movable sound panels for treatment in a new studio space that he recently got into. And basically the idea is you take sound blankets and you drape them over a frame, and then you put them on a rollable C-stand. So you've got this great sound absorbent panel that you can just move around in a studio space and put it wherever it's most useful. But if you're not using it, you can either take it apart, I guess, if you need it to be really small, or you can just roll it up against a wall and it's nice and flat. So that is like just an excellent sound treatment idea, and I've built them myself for my own use, and now you're doing it as well. So that's going to be excellent for your video work, I'm sure.
So one of the things that's nice about it is the sound blankets he recommended are black on one side and white on the other. So they also double as V flats. You can actually use them to reflect or cut light, which is pretty cool. I had about $300 budgeted for new studio stuff for V flats. I was gonna buy them. I'm like, wait a second, I can spend that $300 and get sound treatment too. Like, I'm gonna be doing a ton of videos. Let's make the sound better. VFATs can come another day. I still think they're gonna be useful for the studio, but I think this will cover most of my bases, at least for now. So
yeah, and they really are wide enough. Like, if you don't believe us, I know a lot of sound blankets look not great, or like if you're on a budget,
these
a lot of
were
people
really
use moving
expensive.
blankets.
They were like $50 a blanket.
Yeah, these are relatively expensive sound blankets.
If you don't buy in bulk, they're like $80 a blanket.
Yeah,
but I bought in bulk. They're only like $50 a blanket that way. But no, that like the white is a very clean white. I was really happy with it. Very little color distortion.
Yep, exactly. So it's super, really excellent solution. Definitely check out DSLR Video Shooter and check out that DIY sound panel video. It's good stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was a fun one. I definitely have a lot more work to do. I think the very last kind of sign-off thing is like, when you are looking at a studio, don't don't try to copy someone else's studio. So think about why that thing works in their studio, and are there any lessons you can learn from that? There are definitely a few things that I'm copying, like the sound panels from DSLR Video Shooter. Like that was an excellent thing. I'm going to take that and use it in my space. Awesome. But there are other things too that like, oh, I see what you did there and I like the idea and concept behind it, but that's not really going to work here. So like another one that I saw was they mounted a bunch of LED panels to the roof so that on swivels. So whenever they do a YouTube video, they just turn on their LED panels and swivel it to wherever in the studio they are that they're shooting the video. Well, my new studio does not have an enclosed roof. I can't bounce light off it like he did. So it's like, that's a great idea. It doesn't quite work in my space, but like, what are some things I can think about to make the space a little more friendly for video shooting rather than having to follow myself around with a big light setup? So there's those kind of things that like, I'm going to have to work on it. I'm going to tweak it. I want it to look and feel high end. And right now I'm doing a bunch of the like contractor installation type stuff. But yeah, there will be more content to come.
Yeah, a studio is a tool just like any other tool in your kit. And definitely don't think of it as just like an empty box. Like mold it and change it and adjust it so that it is the best tool it can be for your particular shooting, your use cases.
And don't feel bad if you move in and you're like, this isn't quite working. Refine it, mold it, chip away at it. Like,
it's an evolving process.
What works for you, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing the news and some of the thoughts behind your new studio. It's exciting stuff. I cannot wait to see it.
Oh, it's very exciting. No, it'll be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this little offshoot episode talking about some of the thought process of building a new studio. There might be some more content here about that, but there definitely will be on your YouTube channel. Yeah. So check out Nom Creative on YouTube and you'll get to follow along with the journey of building a new studio. But other than that, we will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening and watching.
And indulging my talking about myself for an hour.
And that.
If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@photo-op.show.
Watch us on Ben's YouTube channel at Nom Creative.
As in Om Nom Nom.
Share this with a friend, and you can listen to Photo Op anywhere podcasts are sold.
Or download it. 'Cause it's free.